interact in the crypto economy, interact in your crypto world.
It's going to be as simple as Instagram.
Somebody wants to raise their hand and say, you should have done option A.
Without that friction, you would never have found it. It sparks something.
That was kind of how I stayed sane in that corporate world.
It's a one-way door. There's no way, we can't come back from this.
And sending money directly that way.
It's far faster than we are.
Nothing serious, nothing big.
You lose everything.
A lot of people do, but most people don't.
To be able to have a way of having them all talk to each other.
People who ideally are smarter than you.
Welcome, Dan. Dan Trevino, thank you very much for spending your time with me today. I know you're a very busy man. And we've got a short window to have this conversation, which I've been really looking forward to, because you and I have obviously spoken a tremendous amount outside of, on a camera. I mean, obviously on a camera on Google Meets, but I'm quite keen now that I have an opportunity to share who you are and also to find out a bit more about who Dan is. So could you maybe give a short intro into who you are, and then also we can go into what was life like before Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for inviting me. I also have always enjoyed our discussions. I mean, I end up talking to you for like, or intending to ask you like a 5-minute question, and we end up talking for an hour and a half, or hour and 50 minutes, something like that. So, yeah, I'm excited about this too. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, my name's Dan. My, I guess, journey really starts back in the early Linux days. I was one of the guys handing out CDs in front of libraries, Linux CDs, trying to get people to switch to this new operating system. So, privacy, data portability, user ownership have always been important to me. Those were kind of some of the things that I like when the whole promise of the internet was coming. We had these grand ideas about how everybody was going to have their own data and run their own servers and publish their own, whatever. And that got subsumed by the large tech corporations that basically, pigeonholed, siloed everything, and and then spy on us constantly. So we failed there with the internet, right? But I was one of those idealistic people that thought we could build a better world on top of this new internet. I still believe that. I think just the mechanism has changed. For a long time, I have been following that. I spent a lot of time as an advocate, as a leader, as an organizer for different projects. So I was like the head of the Ubuntu Florida Linux group for a few years. I also ran one of the first early Android Google developer groups. That was back when they were kind of more open source than what they are now for Android. Oops, sorry about that. So yeah, and basically that's kind of where I had gone. I had gone into from a professional side, starting off as a developer and then kind of working into leadership and project lead, program lead, and to the point where I'm leading projects that, kind of global integration projects and things like that. And kind of got away from the development a lot. I still did it in my spare time just because it's always been a fun thing to do. So even while I was, working as a program manager or whatever for some big companies, on the side, I was developing Android applications or developing Linux applications and things like that. Nothing serious, nothing big, but just for my own kind of sanity and just because it was something that I found fun. It was a kind of almost a hobby. That was kind of how I stayed sane in that corporate world. But yeah, and then 2016, I found Blockstack. The team really meshed well with what I was looking for. They weren't um, hyping themselves as the next greatest thing since sliced bread, like a lot of the kind of ICO timeframe projects were doing. They were kind of heads down, focused on building, and they didn't even have a quote unquote real blockchain at the time. They had a virtual blockchain for their name system. But what they really had was some great libraries that allowed developers to create privacy data respecting applications. And so I love the ethos, I love the team, I love the capability. And at the time, they were looking to really, what they were talking about was really building a brand new internet. So that resonated with me immediately. And I dove into Blockstack. Um, I began running meetups, and eventually, after running several meetups and helping with not organizing, but kind of helping to run, like, kind of being mentor and monitor and whatever at some hackathons for Blockstack and things like that, I figured I should probably jump back into the developer side a little bit more, so that um, I as I was running meetups in my local area in Portland at the time, I could actually talk intelligently to developers about how they can build these Blockstack apps. And so I got back into development more on Blockstack and developed um, Note Riot, which was a privacy focused open source note taking application. So at the time, Blockstack had um, Gaia, which was basically a user storage, fully encrypted. I wrote Note Riot as a wrapper around this so that you could store notes and different tasks and stuff like that. And again, we didn't have access to this, so this was like completely private note taking and everything, portable, um, desktop and mobile, and all that other fun stuff. And eventually, just kind of, I mean, I can take you like literally from like building Note Riot to gaining interest in the community, and then building more applications on Blockstack, and then into Stacks. If you want to go keep going that that path.
So I'm really keen to explore like what was Google like at that time and what was the ethos versus what everyone sees today and the backlash that they get.
I mean, they're a company, they're a corporation, so they're going to do what's best for them. And I think it was just at the time, iPhone, a year or so before had really kind of reset the baseline for what a mobile operating system should include and how it should work. And so to have Google at the time come out and say, we're going to do this open source Android thing, it was exciting for a lot of us. Like, okay, we can bring these kinds of same features to an open source environment. And so, I mean, I didn't interact with them directly a whole lot. They flew people out to their campuses for various like developer focused uh, like retreats kind of thing occasionally, but it wasn't like a really direct one-on-one kind of thing. They would occasionally feed out marketing materials or developer materials. Here's how you develop with X, right? And they would provide really great sets of like instructions, and so that we could then turn around like and run a meetup locally and pass that on to other developers. So they were really good about that part of it, really communicating down to the organizers, the local organizers, and giving them content so that they could keep things fresh with their local communities. But from the kind of open source perspective, it was more of like a just like we have this hope for this great new platform, and it was great for a couple of years, and then they decided to like reel parts of it back in, right? So I mean, if you see what it was back then, there were companies that were um, taking advantage. I don't want to say taking advantage. They were using the open source nature of what Android was to kind of fork it slightly and try and make it a little bit better in their eyes. And then what you end up with is just a mess of incompatibility, right? And so one reason for them kind of reeling some of that in is to kind of grab a little bit tighter control on what quote unquote Android is and how it works, and make sure that things are interoperable over time. And then I'm sure there were other business reasons for doing that too, but you know, from my perspective, it was just like a disappointing kind of thing that they decided to be more of like, we're going to develop this internally, and then we're going to throw stuff over a wall every now and then.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's as when you start getting to scale, then that's when the problems start arising because you have so many variables coming out and you need to kind of control a few of those. But I
Yeah,
suppose it's also your side is not the control side necessarily. You understand why they would need to control that. It's probably potentially it became more and more controlled and
it
less
is.
open source.
Yeah, exactly, exactly right.
So strategically, it's a good move. Spread it out, let it grow out into this massive field, and then just put a fence around it,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then
and we've
put toll gates on it.
seen that in other places too, right? Even things like Twitter, they'll open up an API, and then when some other version of the software becomes a little too popular, they just shut it off and pull those features inside, right? And not just Twitter, but other platforms as well. Facebook, I think, did that with their games APIs and stuff like that. Facebook's never been a favorite of mine, but yeah, I mean it's common practice, right?
Yeah, well, Facebook isn't what people see on the surface. It was always built around using your network and trying to understand. It was more about data analytics than it was anything else. It was almost like a future, a state before we got polymarkets. It was like the ultimate polymarket. You could see sentiment and you could track everything. Like we saw with when Cambridge Analytica got ousted. That was when we saw exactly what the capabilities were.
But from a user perspective, like when you're saying, "Hey, we've got this great API, and anybody can write games for us," right? And then all of a sudden they see that certain games are becoming maybe bigger than what Facebook or Twitter or whoever the kind of platform owner wants, or maybe doing something different from what they want. They look at that and they just shut off their APIs, or they rewrite their terms of service so that those kinds of things can't happen anymore, and they rein back in control, right?
Yeah. Or they monetize it. You now need to pay X in order or transactional rates to run this specific action. Like we want to, yeah, it's just putting a toll gate on it. Yeah, Blockstack for most people who don't know is obviously now become Stacks, the network where you can, which is a layer two on Bitcoin, and that's where obviously you have invested a lot of time. Obviously, you're one of the first people that I was introduced to in the community. So when I joined, so and I didn't realize you built the note taking app, and then
Yeah, code's still out there. I don't know if it'll run these. Actually, it was using the old Blockstack Connect, so it wouldn't actually work right now, but it could be rewritten to work to use the new Connect mechanisms. I think the only difference is we don't have Gaia, so we don't have Gaia in a real effective way anymore. So we would have to just save stuff locally. But the primitives are there to like still create those types of applications, and I still think those types of things are important. One of the things that they kind of prided themselves on back in the day was you had these libraries for strong encryption. Um, and the reality is not every application has to be a blockchain application, right? Blockchain is great at global state. Um, but if you don't need global state, you don't need a blockchain. So there's still a whole world of applications, day-to-day usage type of things that people can build using those primitives.
yeah, it's well, aren't we moving into that state now with AI where it's like everything has to be with AI, whether it needs it or not? It's like no, we're just gonna copy and paste and put AI functionality in here because this is the new buzzword. Like we
Exactly.
have AI, but it's like what value does it bring? It doesn't actually add that much value to what you're trying to achieve. You're just putting a shiny little badge on to say that you have something because it's the catchphrase of the day.
Right, and people are branding their existing algorithms for making things better as AI now too. So it's not just about putting the shiny badge on there. It's like repurposing. I look at something like Grammarly. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Grammarly, but like they used to
Yeah.
like just parse through your document, provide you with suggestions. Like all of a sudden that's AI. Well, it wasn't AI 2 years ago. Why is it AI now? Um, and maybe they've added some like big LLM, on the back end, but they were making my document better, before AI.
Most people don't comprehend how like LLMs actually work. So they just hear the shiny catchphrase like artificial intelligence. It's like, but do you understand the layers that are involved in that and which part of the process you're in, like where you're putting your input in and where it goes and how it's actually looking at that. People don't quite comprehend that yet.
Yeah,
I mean, it has it. I mean, it's it's far faster than we are at processing information. So that's a good thing to use it for. Like that's what I use it for because it allows me to process information a lot quicker.
when you're even talking about like a platform, how do you build out a platform for X or Y? What are the key things we need to think about? And then you being able to dive into specifics based on those kinds of things, and and then taking that. What's really great is like taking that to like different models and then having them react to each other. I mean, obviously, you can kind of agentify that whole workflow. I'm still doing that kind of thing manually. Like I'll ask two or three separate AIs, and then I'll try and like mix the match in between them and say, okay, what do you think about this?
Oh yeah, no, well, I mean, the using the cross-platform is really interesting for me because not every LLM is good for all types. I mean, open AI is obviously good as a general starting point. Like it looks really easy, but then you can go to other ones which like Claude is completely different. The prompting, while the prompting's the same kind of on each one, but you actually need to understand the nuances of how to interact with each one. It's almost like having conversations with different people. You have to know that this person's going to understand it if I speak to them this way, or and I have to structure my sentences this way for this person for them to comprehend what I'm actually want. And it's really good, like taking something you've got out of like chatbot GPT, so like and then moving it into Claude or even taking it to DeepSeek or from DeepSeek taking somewhere else. So,
They definitely have their own personalities, right?
and
It's I use that term loosely, obviously, but it's like
yeah,
I use the OpenAI stuff for more technical, you know, parts of it. So like it's really good. Their advanced models are really good at architecture and deep understanding of like architectures and the implications of that. But then I can take those architectures and put them into Claude, and Claude's much better at coding out something that I like, I should say. I mean, I can do the same thing in OpenAI stuff, but I think Claude's a little bit better at understanding kind of what makes a good design, at least in my experience.
well, it gets plays back to what you were talking about earlier, where you still do your coding, even though you build these global projects and you push code out across the globe, you're still tinkering. And AI is that point of the prompting is the tinkering, is playing with it to try and figure out how can I find the best way to get exactly what I want. And it's literally like the prompts are almost becoming like code, lines of code now, where you have to understand the sequencing, how is it going to sequence it? I mean, obviously what do they call it now? The reasoning is really good at the moment. That's amazing. I love watching the reasoning where it talks to itself.
Yeah,
Yeah, I use Venice AI, so I was really lucky that I got put onto Venice AI really early. So for those who don't know, Venice AI is built by Bitcoiners, and it's basically doesn't hold any information, but you have access to a whole bunch of different, which I love in the chat because I can literally switch between the LLMs, so you can continue the conversation in a different one. I'd really
yeah,
love to be able to have a way of having them all talk to each other, almost like a debate. That'd be really funny to see, like how they debate each other. Each model debates it like on a debate platform. Give it a topic and then get them to debate.
yeah. That'd be fun, especially with something like DeepSeek having its
Yes.
biases in there and just seeing those biases expressed in different topics. Just it'd be interesting to see how those are expressed, and not just DeepSeek. They all have their own biases,
Oh,
but I
every
mean,
single one has it. Every
yeah, I
single
mean,
one has a little nuance in it.
okay.
Moving forward so what kind of hobbies do you have other than tinkering and building things? Do you have any other hobbies outside of the world of IT and tech?
My hobbies were are computers. They always have been.
Yeah.
When I wasn't building software, I mean, I used to spend a ton of time for a while on building computers, like open source home automation systems and things like that, right? Open source streaming platforms and things like that. So, like, my home has a lot of open source software. Um, uh, I try to minimize how much time I have to spend working on it. But that's, I guess you might consider that kind of my hobby is just open source software in general. I'm always interested to see what's new, how things work, what what capabilities are bringing are coming out in different formats and stuff like that. And just, you know, quite honestly, just the enabling technologies that are being made available are so vast that you really can't keep up with everything. But it's so interesting to see still for me, just what's going on. I can't even think of the name now. It's container something, an open source kind of OCI conformant Docker format, a replacement for Docker. I haven't had time to jump into that yet, right?
So when you say building computers, you mean physically putting them together and building components or
Yeah, there was a
designing
time when
boards?
there was a time when I knew all of the chipsets and how they worked together and what the best matches were. Now, obviously, that kind of is all out the window. Again, now that's one of those things that's just like I just need something to work 100% of the time. I don't need something that I need to be tweaking every day. So I mean, like those, I've kind of obviously I think most people evolve from like tweaking everything daily, changing. I would never spend a lot of time distro hopping, but a lot of people do, right? Switching between different distros and trying things out, different Windows managers and things. That was never my bag, but I did spend a lot of time tweaking different performance characteristics and stuff like that. And it just, people evolve, and those things are just not uh, getting. I mean, I've spent time rebuilding my X Windows server every night, and what do I get out of it? Like 1% performance gain, really? Is it worth it for that those times that I wake up in the morning and my display doesn't work or whatever? Like now I've got to go back and fix everything again or reverse or whatever, and then rebuild things for another 8 hours. So maybe not 8 hours these days, but used to be long periods of time. It's just not worth it anymore. And so my hobbies have evolved from like those tweakier days to just kind of fooling around with new technologies and trying to see what's out there and trying to understand what's the directions of things.
The time that you have got to spend looking at like the new distributions of open source software, what are the trends you're seeing? Is there a trend forming? Is there some signal?
I think we just see maturity. So again, like home automation, such a pain in the butt. um, from an open source perspective. Um, we've had so many incompatible standards, so many partially open standards, that I'm hoping something like Matter is a Matter in Threads. I think it's Threads. Um, Kind of brings some unification to how uh, home automation components work together. Um, I haven't really spent a whole lot of time again looking too much outside. I try and look at things that are relevant to what I'm building. So, what are the kind of key back end technologies? How are they working together? Um, different front end technologies as well. So there's maybe in the last year or so this kind of offline first, local first kind of push. I guess it's been the last year or so that kind of this local first movement has become, I think, more prevalent. It's also possible I just didn't notice it until the last year, but that's something that I've seen, and I've seen platforms, in that respect, kind of adding more local first features to what they're trying to build. So and it's hard to say, anything quite honestly broadly. Um, there might be something that I noticed that I just can't think of right now.
Home automation has always been okay, everything interests me, to be honest. I'm curious about everything. Home automation has always been really interesting for me because I could see, and this is going back at least 15 years, you could see that it would come. And that's only because I worked in like, my family had a security company. So we obviously fitted alarm systems essentially. So you'd have a home alarm system. And then from that, you could see the automation starting to build out because obviously you're using your security system as your main layer of infrastructure, and then you build on top of that. And then you could see people when they were putting in, as the more advanced stuff came out, you could see people building that in. And when they built a house, they would start running the cabling for, like, you'd already have the piping in the house ready to put
Right.
things in. And then you'd have those cables lying there. So you could run a second cable, which would then be, you know, and then LAN cables were all the way through the house. So then it was literally like you had a computer sitting in a room and it was communicating, and you could like control things in the house from a panel. So I mean, that's always been super interesting to me.
or
And
from
the
a laptop.
local, yeah, and then the local one was really cool as well. Like local first, I've seen that. That's probably been about the last 3 years. I think in COVID, that's kind of when it started. People started looking at local first because they had a bit of time. And how can I? And then also understanding that your data isn't your data when it's spread out across the world. That you can now start bringing it inside. So that's something that I found really interesting as well. Running on the Lightning Network, that you could have like basically storage buckets that sit on top of the nodes, so you could store stuff across it. Because you also got, isn't Avia's got like a node as well that you can store because they came out?
Who?
Is it Avia? You got the decentralized storage systems now with run with blockchain. So you basically run a node and the data is encrypted but sits on your node and you just hold the storage.
There's been a couple of them. I mean, there's
Yeah.
been several. I worry about trusting other people with my data, even if it's a network of other people. I mean, I just that's just me. Obviously, there's tons of stuff out there that people have been successfully using for years. But even if you look at like IPFS links from early Stacks days, like we were having a discussion in one of the, I think, GitHub repos about having to basically recache all of this early data because there's IPFS links that are just dropping off the grid, right? Dropping off the network. And IPFS is supposed to be forever. Well, maybe, maybe not.
Uh,
If somebody's not pinning the data, it eventually drops off, right? And so, um, is your is your NFT provider going to guarantee that they're going to pin that data forever? Well, sure, until they will, until they won't. At some point, my priorities might change, and I'm just going to turn that node off. Now, I mean, technically, that stuff is replicated amongst a bunch of nodes, but my point is like priorities change and values change, and nobody's gonna think that your data is as important as you do.
it's an interesting and complex problem to solve.
Yeah, I mean the monetization is there, and that's the whole point, right? As nodes drop off, maybe the monetization goes up, and so there's incentive to stay. And I get all that. I just it's there's maybe it's just natural distrust of everything and everyone.
Well, it's contingency, but yes, I get the distrust part. I mean, that's what I was looking at for the Stacks network was, can we can we get nodes in people's homes and or businesses, and then can we run a file storage on top of that?
Nobody's going to run their own node until they don't have to run their own node. Like if you make it part of just the infrastructure, then I think that's a possibility. I just don't think people are interested in running nodes. They never have been. There's obviously some subset of people that want to do that. Bitcoiners are a clear example. And there are other networks, other blockchain networks where people run nodes. I run a node sometimes. Sometimes I don't. There's times when I've run my node for months, almost years at a time, or 1+ year straight, and then I'll turn it off because I want to move my server. I want to upgrade it and have to take it down. And I just don't want to go through the bother of like restarting it and re-catching up and all this other stuff. But, it just or I've moved houses, and so I took it down and just I couldn't put it back up because there was no good place to put it, or moved apartments or whatever. There's a thousand reasons for me not to run something, especially a node that I might get some value from, but I also the value's marginal. To me, the biggest value is just having like central file storage for our home. So if I want to, stream a movie to the kids' media room to the game room, I can do that from something that I've already known. It's a known quantity. I can stream something up that I know is going to be okay for them to watch. Um, or it's movies, maybe from DVDs that I might have that I own that I, might just want to watch again. Um, but to me, that's most of what I do with my own node is home streaming and the home automation stuff too.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously the home automation stuff. So
I love Home Assistant.
yeah, I'm as I said, I'm really interested. I think it's going to be home automation. I think people haven't yet coined on to, but especially as you start transitioning through, we now have the Internet of Things. So you can that's going to become more prevalent in devices, if not already in devices. We just don't know that it's there already, pinging. And then we're going to have, obviously, when we talk about like the Optimus Prime, and we start getting helpers in our homes, as in robots, then I think that's when home automation is really going to kick off, because you're going to have a lot more integration of electrical devices within your home and sensors.
And Wi-Fi, and but then, like, if you've got a robot in your house,
Hmm.
it makes sense to, like, plant the nodes in that robot. I'm just saying, like, my mother's never gonna start a node in her home, right?
Yeah,
She uses the cable TV, and it's got on and off buttons, like,
yeah,
that's really the functionality that they need. So, it's just a matter of most people don't want to mess with tech, and don't want to fool with the tech, right? Um, again, obviously, there's some subset of people that are happy to do that and want to do that, but I think just most people aren't gonna run nodes, even if it's for things like, uh, their own private data. I mean, I've got a laptop, unless that node is just running on my laptop all the time, I'm probably not gonna have most people don't have external storage devices. A lot of people do, but most people don't. Most people don't treat the people that do have them don't treat them as like proper backup.
yeah. Well, you and I've lived through. I'm sure I've lived through multiple times of hard drives crashing, something not working, corrupt files, then nothing works. You can't even pull anything off it. It's just you lose everything. And those are the days before you had like, you know, you could save something to the cloud. This was pre-cloud. If you didn't back it up, you were stuffed. You literally had to, and then you had those like the power supply in case the electricity went off, because then that would also, like, if the PC just shut down, would corrupt everything. So you had to have like a thing that would then shut it down, so you had enough time to shut it down. And I remember that it was this big box, but it only gave you 5 minutes of like time. Which is this
Right.
huge battery, but it only gave you 5 minutes. To think like now you can buy something that's slightly smaller than and give you hours of backup like power. It was
Yeah.
super funny in those days. So I want to transition to, we didn't quite touch on spyware, which was something that you brought up earlier when you're talking about the open internet, and then the internet changing, where it was kind of monopolies came in and took over, just like with software, with open software. You had Microsoft went from, taking something that was open source and then creating an entire sort of platform from that. I mean, Apple's built out a Linux as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, the mock microkernel,
So
BSD Unix, I think. Not Linux.
not Linux. Okay. So I'm quite keen to. You've kind of touched on life as a founder, so I'd like to touch on your life as a founder, because you've said like you don't have a hobby. Your your project is your hobby. So maybe you just want to talk a bit to what it's like to be a founder. Then we can talk about Boom Wallet. So for those people who are not sure about Boom Wallet yet, because it's starting to heat up there as well.
The thing is, like, in my kind of personal experience, um, you got to obviously put people around you that you trust, and especially with decisions, because there's so many decisions, even day to day, even before you launch, that you just don't have time to do them all. If you're going to actually spend any serious time building something, you don't have time to make all those decisions, right? And so you have to put people around you that you trust, people who ideally are smarter than you. Then you have to hope you get a ton of support from, like, your family and friends. Um, I think different people have different situations. I've seen, uh, like, people talk about raising funds from their friends and family, and they're raising $1 million. And, my friends and family don't have $1 million to, like, help me bootstrap. But being able to, um, find funding to continue if you're going to focus on this full time, right? If you're not working part time, to actually fund your hobby or your startup, uh, that's important, and that's a huge stress. I'm at the center of this like huge cone of support from outside people, whether that's the community who we get a ton of support from, just in terms of like encouragement and feature requests and excitement about what we're doing, what we're talking about, asking questions about what we're doing. Like that's hugely helpful just from a like an energy perspective, right? And then you get some people who are really focused from that community who really want to dig in and help. Obviously, we've got like a core set of alpha testers that aren't afraid to jump into the app, try it out, tell us what's wrong, tell us what's broken, things like that. That is a huge help. Um, Having people actually test your software and actually being able to tell you about it, because I think a lot of the software these days, not just these days, sorry, just for all time, what I've seen building all the way back to the Note Write days, is that when people encounter software errors, a lot of times they blame themselves and then they'll keep their mouth shut, right? Which doesn't help you as a builder, because I'm probably the one that introduced the error. And if I don't know about it, it's going to stay out there broken, right? So people who are willing to give feedback are hugely helpful. And then, like I said, my family, my friends, I've had friends who are just, they'll just like, hey, just wondering how you're doing. How's this thing going? What are you working on these days? Which is, again, good to know that people are interested. And my family, I mean, they see me working all the time. Um, they are a huge help in terms of just like, I can ask my daughter to help me with videos. I can ask my son to help me with graphics. My wife's just always been there to like test stuff, even when she doesn't know what it does. I'll be like, does this work on your phone? Is it resized right? Is it easy to use? Do you know what to do on this screen? If you look at the screen, do you know what to do? And she's not a tech person, so she's like a great test. If she looks at a screen and doesn't understand what she's supposed to do, then I know I need to keep working on it, right? Plus, just the time. Like again, I used to be. I've kind of evolved away from this, but I used to be going to my son's baseball practices, and I was the idiot in the stands, typing on my laptop while he's practicing out there. And had to make a focused effort to like shut the laptop off during games and actually watch him play, um, because I was always thinking like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. I've learned to take that time off, but it's still like the kids, the family, the wife, they see all the time you're putting into it, and you need that support, right? You need that support from friends and family. So
Yeah, so that's the key for people who want to start something is you need to make sure that you have a good support network, whether it be community. I mean, family is vitally important for anything you want to do in life, but especially if you're going out to be an entrepreneur and to build something, and to create something. And then obviously, as you said, having people who are intelligent, but also it's having people who are good at things that you're not good at. Like that's another that you complement each other. And like friction is not always a bad thing in a startup. It's the friction sometimes is where you find something that's of tremendous value that without that friction you would never have found it. It sparks something that allows you to push forward and to win sometimes. So not all friction is bad, but sometimes it can be a time waster if it's the wrong type of friction.
or it's the wrong time. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're picking between option A and option B, and you choose option B, and you're a month and a half into implementing option B, and somebody wants to raise their hand and say, you should have done option A. Well, either sorry, shut the fuck up or get out. It's like we're past that. We're maybe there's a point where it's more valuable to jump back and rethink that decision. But a lot of I've worked with some people who are way past that decision, and then decide to like chime in, and that's not valuable. It's not helpful at all.
Well, I suppose that's also having the right team and everyone understanding that this is because it's something that I read like I read a while ago, but it's what Jeff Bezos talks about doors. There's two-way doors and one-way doors. Everyone has to know when it's a one-way door, there's no way we can't come back from this. So it's either
Well, I mean,
and
it's
the
it's
two ways we can come back again and we can say, well, it didn't work and we'll change direction.
Yeah, well, I think even the one-way doors are almost the way I see them, they're all two-way doors. Even if you're at a point where you're through a one-way door, like we've decided on something, we're not going to throw away a month and a half of development in order to go back and start over. We need to get this done, but we can evaluate after we get this out there. Like, is it working for people? Is it not working for people? What are the issues, right? Um, and you evolve based on that. Maybe there's pieces of it that you need to redo in a different way, or maybe you need to rethink your architecture slightly, or something like that. But like that's there are pieces that I would say have been like one-way doors that it's okay to release something that's maybe not 100% perfect, right? And then figure out what you need to fix rather than restart over from scratch. It's just it depends on the decision, but um, again, knowing people around you, knowing the right time to bring up these issues and the wrong time to bring up the issue uh, is helpful.
Software is a slightly different game, I suppose. You can always, and what you said is right. He's not fully giving everything because you have time constraints as a starter. But getting it out there means you're going to get far more feedback, and it will give you that compass is going to start pointing for you to go, oh, okay, well, nobody likes this or is using this feature, or this is cumbersome. So this
Or
we
it's too
don't need, but
slow.
we can now, but this does work. So let's follow this direction. So it gives you a lot of feedback. So
Yeah.
you want to give a like a 1 minute, 2 minute elevator pitch on what Boom Wallet is?
This is not new concepts. We're just borrowing from Web 2 and trying to make things familiar to users, right? So we're pulling the wallet kind of behind the scenes. It's still obviously a core part of what we're building, but the idea here is to facilitate a Bitcoin economy. Boom's um, main goal is to kind of help build out uh, a Bitcoin economy that brings users to creators and merchants and makes it easier for merchants and creators to like bring their services, their goods, whatever, out to the world. And so um, we're building essentially a new two-sided market for Bitcoin, trying to connect builders, suppliers with users, the demand side, in a really simple and easy way. And so payments is part of that. Um, Obviously, all of the normal blockchain types of transactions that you would do are part of that. What we want to do though is kind of reimagine what it means to interact in the crypto economy, interact in your crypto world. Um, so again, we're trying to make sure that we bring products to users instead of having a bunch of individual silos where things might exist and communities might exist. We want to try and bring those as much together as possible, or at least links to those things as as close together as possible, and make it easy for users so that they're not having to deal with um, uh, the complexities of blockchain. And I say that in the sense that like if you look at like even a Cash App interface for payments versus like your typical crypto wallet. It's not that the crypto wallet is hard, but it's unfamiliar to 99% of the world, right? And so they know recipients, they know an amount, and they know what send means. Um, if we can like boil the interfaces down to those kind of like super simple pieces, then I think that's a huge win. And part of that is Stacks Pay. I've gone past the 2 minutes elevator pitch here. Part of that is Stacks Pay. Stacks Pay is a SIP proposed SIP standard that we introduced that kind of wraps Stacks transactions in a simple, easy to use URL, or you could which you can then put into a QR code. So for those familiar with Lightning payments, it's very similar to that. For those not, it's very similar to like Venmo or Cash App, scanning QR codes to pay for things or services, and sending money directly that way. So simplifying those pieces, I think, is kind of core to what we're trying to do. Um, and the crypto wallet is behind that all.
Whether you like it or not, I keep saying to you, the Instagram of wallets, meaning that it's going to be as simple as Instagram, where you can do what you need to do and you don't see the blockchain, the same as Instagram. It was a photo app, but you don't think about it as a photo app anymore because
Right.
you've built it and it's super easy to. You got communication, you got everything you need inside this application, including payments and buying stuff.
We took some inspiration from Nostr, what they were doing. I really love Nostr as a platform. It's just not ready yet. Um, but yeah, money is social. Money is a social thing, right? And so we want to again bring the users into a place where they can easily interact with merchants, creators, or each other. And money is behind that. So it's social interactions, and the money's back there. So yeah, that's definitely the vision.
We're coming up to towards the end. Is there anything you'd like to discuss that we haven't discussed, or anything you'd like to share?
From a boom perspective, um, I think one of the other keys we didn't really talk about was like names. So BNS is a key part of what we're building at Boom. We want to really expand on the way names have been used in the past. we I don't want to say took a step back, but we took a sidestep with BNS v2 and the ability to use subdomains. I think there's a just as a side note, I think there's a world where a BNS v3 can really supercharge what we're calling subdomains. And subdomains are basically names within a name. So if users have a name like dan.btc, which is mine, I could actually have multiple accounts within dan.btc, and I can have like a dev.dan.btc, a boom.dan.btc, a home.dan.btc. Those are all separate accounts, separate addresses, separate potentially separate keys. Um, but we can take that same concept and now apply it to like onboarding users. And whereas right now, if somebody wants a BTC name, they have to get into a wallet, they have to fund it with Stacks somehow, and whether it's from someone else or from them, or they buy it themselves, they have to get Stacks into the wallet. They have to go and buy a name, right? Um, we're with subdomains, we're just assigning names, and so it allows us to really scale BNS, the name system, really quick and easily and cheaply, and it allows Boom to kind of focus on names rather than addresses as a key part of how people socialize.
Yeah, that's the social side of it. So, for those who don't know, BNS stands for the Bitcoin naming service. So, you also got ENS, so Ethereum naming service. And what it is from a Web2 perspective, it's basically a domain name like your .com. But now you have it in Web3, you can actually assign it and have all of your information. So, all of your addresses for payments underneath it. You can assign a lot of information underneath that name, and it becomes a human readable name essentially, rather than having a whole long hash string or wallet for people to interact. They can just go like mine's obviously Hattie.btc, yours is Dan.btc, and obviously it's the premier Bitcoin naming service. So that's like for Bitcoin.
Other wallets will use names right now. So if I want to send you a name, I can type in Hattie.btc. But on Boom, basically the names are what you're going to see first. The names are up front. The names are the key part of how we're interacting and how we're managing, or not managing, but how we're putting consumers and merchants and creators and users and all these things together.
Yeah, the easiest way to say it would be is your email address. So it's like having email address, and then subdomains would
Right.
be more email addresses.
Or
I can have. Yep.
exactly. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah. So now we've come to the end of our time. So the last part of it's called the final scribble. So obviously, being blank page is the podcast. What's the final part of this? Is there a word or a phrase that best describes your journey, Dan?
Yeah, I would say it's actually something I've used as my email signature, and it's on my GitHub. Something I've been saying for years. It's life, liberty, and the pursuit of open standards.
And then, is there a question you have for the audience? So obviously, we've had a discussion, but is there a question that you would like to pose to the audience?
The biggest question I have is like, what are the biggest constraints to not our audience or your audience here using crypto wallets, but to your mothers, your mother-in-laws, your brothers and sisters that aren't part of crypto? what's the biggest issue that prevents them, other than maybe the potentially like the distrust of crypto and that exists out there for some. I think user interfaces are not ideal, and I'm just curious. I would be curious, like, what are the things that really get your goat as you use these crypto wallets every day? I know it gets my goat. I'm tired of seeing balance, send, receive, swap.
Really requires people to think a different way of doing it and not just copying sort of MetaMask, for lack of a better wallet. Like, just everything looks like MetaMask, and every wallet follows the same, which is great because when you go to your new wallet, like for you and I, it's like, oh, okay, I understand how this operates. But at the same time, I'm going, but hang on a minute, this is not what I want to see. I would prefer to have it a different way. The same as people have desktops set up or you have like apps. I want to set it up a different way for myself or to have different things shown to me because I have a different use case. I'm not looking at my balance.
Does Instagram have payments or anything like that?
They've got some payment. They've got where you can
I'm sure.
pay now. I think it, but it ships you outside of the app. I think to a
So, like, WhatsApp is adding payment information. Telegram,
already
um,
has.
ton. I think like when you go into those apps, you don't see your wallet balance up front, right? Facebook Marketplace, they're not showing you a wallet balance up front, right? You're showing you a bunch of products. Um, and they're showing you communities and they're showing you things that you might want to see that are not your wallet balance. And so that's kind of where we're coming from.
Well, we're just at that point now with wallets where, or if we move away from wallets and we say the applications are moving from a single function to bundling more functionality into it. So can chat now come into it? Yes, now we can have chat in the same. So you can have the payment and the chat. Then you can say, okay, well, I want stores now. So I can pay, I can chat, and I can shop. So what else can we put in there? I mean, it's endless. And if you think about the phone or the app being the node potentially, that's could I stream films out of that? Could I stream music out of that? Like it's just once you have built this platform, it's basically a platform. It's no longer a wallet. You're just building a platform, and the
Right.
platform happens to sit on or integrate with multiple like blockchains, so you can just move across them seamlessly as a user without knowing, oh, I'm on Ethereum now, or oh, I'm on Bitcoin now, or I'm on Solana. You don't see that. You just see, here's my wallets, and it's all done for you in the back end. Even DeFi will be plugged on the back end. You won't even see it. Because when you
Right.
do a bank transaction, if I send you money today from Europe to America, I don't see the routing it takes. I just see I've sent it, and then I know a day or two later, and then you go, "Hey, Brendan, thank you," and there's the
Right.
money. So that's I think where Boom Wallet will leapfrog people, but has
And
already.
we're doing some user interface experimentation too that may or may not work. I mean, we don't know. Like, again, taking that swap button um, away and making it more contextual. We're trying to do that so that different tokens have different options in terms of like DeFi. Like you might be able to add liquidity to add to a stake one in a liquidity pool, but you can't stake a different one, right? And so we're trying to like reimagine like how do we contextualize the access to the functionality, right? Instead of sticking a generic swap button out there for everybody, let's make a dashboard of things that you can do on a per token basis, right? And then dynamically populate it based on um, liquidity pools or swap options or staking options or whatever it is, right? So, and
No,
people may reject that, but we definitely want to do something different.
it would be your trading account, bank account, and everything in one place. That's what it would eventually become. So I would, because with blockchain, you're sovereign. In other words, the custodian your own stuff. The bank doesn't have it. You, the custodian. This is the application. So the Boom is going to be allow you to do everything as if it was your bank. You are the bank. You can do all these things. You can put it in liquidity if you want to earn yield. You can put it here. You can put it here, and then from there, then you can branch off and say, well, hey, you need your tax done. This is where you do your tax, and this is where you do this, and it just plugs in. So it's just a central platform because you are just creating the tooling for people to be their own bank. That's what quintessentially what it's going to be.
Yes, exactly.
Dan, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I think we have way more to discuss, and maybe we can do a round two when you've got time. And obviously, when Boom definitely comes out, then it'll be amazing to have you again, and then we can maybe walk through it as well.
That sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.